Hello, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I got scared there for a second because an hour ago, like my PC wouldn't boot, so... Oh, but it was just all due to me cleaning up, so... I cleaned the internal bits of my PC and I forgot to properly reseat the RAM, so that was fun. Hello Magma, hello Alexander, hello Alex, Abdallah, lovely to see you all. I think Anton isn't here anymore, but hello Anton. Hello Sheila. Sorry, we're just gonna get started here in just a second. I was actually checking out Fab and my account that has disappeared now? What? Hold on, let me do this at least. Get myself in focus. Hello Enrique. Oh, Nacho's being really annoying in the background. I guess everything has already been moved over to Fab, but like I can't even see my history anymore. What? Like my sales history? Like is that just all gone now? Okay. Interesting. So I guess I'll have to freaking figure that out as well. It's weird because I had some like updates that like all of our stuff got like moved over to Fab. And now just seems that it's gone. Has anyone checked it out already? Like the new Unreal Engine Marketplace? Because I actually haven't done so. Fab is now live. Migrate your existing... Oh, that's a couple months ago. Okay. I'm not up to date with all of this. I think the library is still not working. It shows up empty. Yeah, I saw that happening with like a couple of people. Just looking through like some of my emails, but time to move. Oh yeah. So yeah, I got like a bunch of updates. Cool. So they moved my stuff over to Fab. Or did they not? Yeah, they did. But then so I go to my account like it's gone? It launched yesterday. Yeah, it did. It did. But like I can't even see my payment history that I had from the Unreal Engine Marketplace, right? So I'm currently like completely in the blind of like if I had sales in the last month because I can't have access to it anymore. It is weird. Yeah, I'll need to look into this more in a bit. Seller account. Oh no, there we go. Okay. Just confusing. Okay, so it's still there. It's just hidden behind like a bunch of clicks now. Okay. Then see what happened in the last couple of months. Nothing. Cool. Glad they made it easy to claim the mega scans. Oh yeah, they kind of had to, or otherwise like they would have so much traffic from like all the people just like going through it by one, or like some person just making like a script, right? So they kind of had to do that, to be honest. So why not do it on their terms rather than someone else making like a script that like anyone needs to run, right? I think the library is still not working. Yeah. Be curious to have a quick peek at it, actually. So Fab. Discover. Okay, let me see. Oh, that's probably going to be this screen. Hold up. Oh no, it's not. It's not, but it's all kinds of weird. Oh, it looks like I haven't set this one up properly yet, huh? Okay, just gonna move all this stuff over here. Sorry for the motion sickness for people. Okay, let's actually have a look here. Oh. Oh, okay. Has Unity stuff on it as well. I was not expecting that. I wanted to ask you if there's a calendar for your live stream. Not really. Like, I just do these streams like every Wednesday on the same time. And if you want to stay up to date, probably the best way to do that is to get into the Discord. Like, we have like an events tab there that keeps you up to date. I tried to make like a calendar on the website work for a while, but that has been so out of date that it's like, I wouldn't trust that. Even though I have full control over it. So it looks nice and clean. What I'm going to be very interested in is how curated this stuff is all going to be. Hey, Joe. Hey, Sanjivan. Because that was always my concern, right? Well, first of all, my main concern was that it wasn't going to be flooded like the ArtStation marketplace is now with just like a bunch of random AI stuff. And they still have to migrate that over to Fab too, so who knows what's going to happen with that. Let's see. So like the information on here is pretty minimal. It doesn't show like who made it in like the title here, which is pretty interesting, which is what I was expecting actually. Where you just have like a title of like the person who made it so that it's easier to find people that are renowned, right? Acid Smash. Included format. Oh, okay. Let's see. This is cool. So like a bunch of technical details, amount of textures, square textures. Additional information, it's not scanned. Vertices, polygons, unique meshes, that's pretty cool. It does say Blender over here, but then it doesn't... I'm assuming it just comes with a Blender file for everything, but that's pretty open to interpretation, right? Compatible with Blender, cycles and Eevee. I mean, this is just whatever's up to like the person who's writing it, right? So this can be whatever it wants. I'm assuming that it's like a little bit curated. But I just like, oh God, I don't like this though. Generated with AI? No, that means that they're gonna use AI. That they're gonna have AI on this marketplace too. I do not like that. Just like straight up. Not because of the... Not necessarily because of just like AI creations, right? But just like how quick it floods it with just like... What is a quality bar for like an AI generated thing, right? Like what is a quality bar for it? Like how do you decide if that is going to be good or useful? Because I feel like the bar is going to be so low on AI generated stuff that even if they have like checks and balances in place, that is still going to be flooded with AI stuff anyway. Which if they then don't have like any sort of filtering like that actually works, and with some sort of like, I don't know, some sort of AI from their own, I guess, or some sort of like checking from themselves, where they can actually thoroughly validate like AI stuff coming onto the marketplace. If they don't have anything like that, it's just gonna turn into like ArtStation like 2.0, and I do not want that, because right now, if I have to give people the recommendation where to publish stuff, the only benefit that I can really see about ArtStation is if you have a big following already, then it's good to post on ArtStation. But in terms of like just the trust for like selling stuff on ArtStation is completely lost to me. Joe saying hopefully they will get enough content from the Unreal Engine marketplace and Sketchfab that hopefully the AI landfill from ArtStation marketplace will not make too much of a dent. I think that's honestly going to be the issue, right? The fact of the matter is that it's always easier to generate a bunch of AI stuff compared to hand-authored stuff that is made with the love of people, right? So even if they do that, if they do still allow AI onto the marketplace, then it's still gonna flood it over time. Gumroad seems to be a better place in my opinion from a selling point of view. The thing with Gumroad is that you have to have a specific link to someone's Gumroad page. I don't know if they've fixed it or whatever, but this was a huge issue with Gumroad, is that if you don't know a person who's selling on Gumroad specifically, you will not find them on Gumroad, right? Like the whole thing about like having a marketplace to me is that it's like you can actually find people, right? You can actually discover new people and find like new additions to the marketplace, where Gumroad just made that like impossible. To be fair, I haven't been on Gumroad in like ages, so if it's just for like, hey, you just want to sell some files, right? Like Gumroad is fine, but I think if you're actually looking at it from like a business perspective, like no, you need that searchability of like an actual marketplace. Hello, Guillaume. My mind is saying it would be cool if you can see the folder you get. Not too sure what you mean by that. Oh, you mean that if you buy something that you can see that in like your library, right? What is in my library? Look. Yeah, so our stuff is in here. So they did, okay, so they did port that over straight away. Interesting. And then this is supported by Unreal with all the versions too. What is in here then? This is all stuff that I filled out, right? So I'm wondering how it like came over. Because it does seem that this is not as well laid out as like the newer ones that are added by the looks of it. Allow usage with AI, generated with AI. Nope. Okay. Oh, and then something that I haven't talked about, actually, I didn't know about, is let's see. There's licenses now, which is pretty cool. So the personal license is for like an individual creator or small team under 100K in the last 12 months. Okay. And then professionals over 100K. Okay. That is pretty interesting. What are we looking at here in terms of filters? Oh. What if I only want like 1 to 2 gigs though? Weird. From your perspective, do you think it's worth investing time into creating kits to build a seller profile on Fab? So I think if there ever was an opportunity to do that, it is probably right now. Whenever there's a launch of like a new marketplace, if you can be within like the first wave of it, that is usually like a good position to be in, right? Because then you can establish yourself on like a new platform as like a new seller. The benefit that we have as sellers, even though I never really focus on it too much, is that you can just like migrate your stuff to like other places as well. So you don't have to be specific to a single marketplace. If it kind of depends on how serious you want to be. Because my perspective on it, or like my way that I approached it, is that I would just do personal work and then I would make it sellable, right? So my way of approaching it is completely different than like the majority of other people are going to do it, where like you see a lot of people now that are just building content to make that for like online marketplaces, right? Which can work. I've seen some interesting numbers over the years of like individuals doing that, and it can be like a pretty sizable income by itself. But it needs to be good. It's a lot of it leans on like your reputation as well, where if you're a person who's well known in the industry that then also sells things on the side, like those work kind of in tandem, right? Because they can rely on that specialization to filter into like your assets too. So it's you gotta, in my opinion, think about this as like a long-term thing, unless you're gonna go for like a different content strategy where you're like outsourcing a lot and then aggregating it all on like your under like your banner, right? Like Decagon, like Lay Artist Studios, like those kind of examples. Doo-doo-doo. How does the portfolio review application work on the site? I put in the application around 3 weeks back, but I don't see my name in the queue. It's not a manually approval thing. It might just be something wrong with the automation then. Thanks for bringing that up. It should normally be automated. But yeah, if there was ever a time to like dip into this, like now would be the time. I would probably think about try to anticipate what's gonna happen with Unreal Engine 4 Fortnite. And with like a more content how would you say that? Like a user-generated content kind of mindset, right? Where like, what are people looking for? What is very popular? What are people looking for when they build their own things, right? Like if you want to kind of make it a professional thing, you kind of have to look at it that way. Yeah. I mean, man. This is all over the place in terms of like, in terms of quality. That's the other thing, right? Like, how are you gonna stand out in this? I think I would still stand by with like my original point, where like if you build an audience for yourself by putting out like high quality stuff over time, people are going to recognize that and they're going to remember your name or like your business, whatever you want to go by, right? But that takes time, because in the meantime you're competing with like all of this on like a daily basis. I would actually be curious to see what the rate of updates is. Just filter by newest. It would be interesting to kind of know from like a market research point, like how many people are actually dumping like stuff on this website, right? Like adding stuff to it. So yeah, depends on how serious you are about this. Like that will be interesting to look into. Let's see, education and tutorials, interesting. Oh, sample packs and stuff, okay. I guess that this is all just like Unreal content, right? Yeah. Okay. That's pretty interesting. What is this one then? tool tutorial. The skill or the tool tutorial. Okay. So there's like an educational section on here as well. Pivot building. Okay. Yeah, so that's something to look into then. We're not here for that today though. We're gonna switch it on back because we do want to give people some feedback today. So let's get started with that, shall we? Oh, I kind of forgot that I haven't given an update. I think it's because like this week has been incredibly busy. I think most of you that are here have seen like the kickoff for like the team challenge that we had over the weekend, which has gone fantastic. Up until this point, it's the biggest team challenge yet. We have double the amount of teams that we've ever had, and I think currently there's like 75 people participating in the current team challenge. A little bit chaotic because people are switching in and out. There's people that, because of the short like timeline that we had for like people filtering into the Discord, there were some issues with that as well. So we had to like replace people. But hey, knock on wood, everything's going good up until this point. And it's awesome to see like everyone just like working on their own thing. Don't want to miss out when it happens. Oh no. Like I still have like all the data coming in, right? So like in your case, Joe, if you send an application, I still have that data. It just isn't linked up to the website. So I need to sort that out. Thank you for the update on portfolio review thing. I can't find the Discord link anywhere. You have to sign up via the link in the description down below. It is a paid Discord. I'll disclaim that straight away. But you sign up by going through our website. Guillaume saying the team challenge, what is that? Yeah, what is that, Guillaume? I hope it's going well for you. Cool. Yeah, so all the focus of this week has basically been on the team challenge. But that's not going to let us get in the way of the routine. Let's have a look-see. So let me get Discord up and running. And let's see what people have been posting about. So we're going to start out with Val. Val is new to the community and also immediately participating in the team challenge. So Val is diving into the deep end, which is awesome. Love that spirit, Val. I think this is a tutorial from God damn it. Called again. Fast Track, right? From Emil Schlegers, I think, if I'm not mistaken. So Val is saying, I've been working on this for the last while. I've just started on creating the textures now, but this is the main layout with fairly final assets. No props have been added. Nice one. Yeah, I think this is a great start. Maybe for next time, make sure that you ask questions, right? If you're looking for any kind of feedback and you're signing up for Whip Wednesday, make sure that you ask a little bit of feedback so that we can talk about things. But what I'm seeing here looks good, pretty straightforward. I've seen a couple of environments that kind of have like the same sort of angle, right? Nothing wrong with that at all. Like, don't let that stop you. But yeah, it's pretty. What would you say to that? Like, pretty standard for like this environment now, right? So that kind of means like, what can you do to differentiate it from like the rest, right? That would be a good question to ask. Usually, you can do it with like a couple of very quick things, right? You don't have to do a lot. Like if you just add like, I don't know, like some banners to the buildings, right? So we have like banners draped down. Maybe there's like a couple of banners here. Maybe you design like a cool logo that can go onto the banner. Something like that can like already like distinguish it like from itself. And that is literally just like I don't know, a little bit of work, right? So you kind of would want to differentiate in like a really easy way. This also comes in with like the props, right? So maybe if you're not at the stage yet where you don't have any props, how can you do the same thing? And what are they gonna be, right? People able to work with blockouts, I admire you. Wait, but you're showing the blockout later on as well. Like I was saying, my feedback would be that the ground looks too flat. It should be a bit bumpy, especially around the edges, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good shout. Just increasing like the little bit of a bumpiness. It kind of depends on what the textures are gonna be, right? If we have like a balance between man-made and natural stuff. So for example, if we have like a proper pathway going to here, but then maybe this is like a little section of a garden, right? So that then is a garden, and then maybe this is like a different kind of stone path. It kind of links up with like the main path here. It kind of depends on like the main texture of it, but that's a really good point. Is it a fast track tutorial environment? I think it is. Yeah, I think it is, John. I think it is. But yeah, it's looking good so far. Again, as a reminder, feel free to ask for specific things of feedback for next time, right? So that we have something to focus on. But for now, try to think about like how to differentiate from like everyone else that looks or that has followed the same tutorial, and how you can like elevate it with like really simple things, right? Like I was saying, I can't tell if it's meant to be concrete or grass or sand on the ground right now. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's going to come in with like the texture pass, right? John is vouching for the tutorial. I have not followed the tutorial myself, or I've never even kind of followed along with people that have done it. So I got no clue. But yeah, I've heard from multiple sources that Emil puts out some like really good stuff. Or like fast track tutorials. I like the pillar blocking part of the view, brings more focus to the building. Yeah. It's a nice way. Like, I personally love working with like visual blockers, right? In my work, I'm very deliberate with those. Because I know that if I have like a bunch of distracting stuff, plus like just a bunch of stuff that I still have to make, if I then just put like something in front of it that I can kind of work into the storytelling of the whole piece, I'm done. I don't need to make it, right? But yeah. Some banners, some flags, anything could help here. Yeah, you can really do a lot with a little in these cases. Let's see, you might, like, one thing that I will say is that you might have to watch out for your proportions. Because if we have like a person standing here, if we were to translate that over there, kind of feels like it's going to be very tight. So you just have to be careful for that. Yeah. Composition is nice. It's really good. A lot of modularity in this as well. So this is going to be fun to execute on. Is this a scene from Flip Normal's course? No, it's from Fast Track. John is saying though he can give a little bit of his own spice to it. It will be more satisfying in the end. Yeah, for sure. The Ultimate Lighting course from Fast Track is great. Yeah, I have not seen that one either, but... So yeah, how to differentiate, like, really, like, what I would do in a case like this is I would not have one person. I would literally scatter that person wherever I have, like, a new mesh coming in, so that I can have, like, a measurement of that person all around the scene. That I can kind of, like, just on a glance have just, like, all things checked out when it comes to my proportions. Yeah. Great stuff, Val. I'll see you next week, and I'm excited to see... Oh, sorry. I'm excited to see these updates. It's going to be nice. Cool, and then we're switching over to Tobias. Tobias is over here. Right. I like what I'm seeing. So let's have a look at the Discord first. Thanks for the previous feedback. I pushed this a bit further. I think I'm almost onto final polish. Still have a few things that I'm working on. I'm still midway through working on the books. And I plan to add splinters and maybe add maybe the odd nail or two for the wood frame, the wood planks around the frame. Oh, okay. First of all, this is looking really nice. Really, really great job on like all the adjustments. I like what you did with the blood. Like the blood feels like way more natural and organic now. And also we're getting, like we pointed out last week, right? Where we're getting like these nice touches of cause and effect, right? With that, I mean that if there's a pool underneath like a piece of fabric, that we see the effect of that pool onto the piece of fabric, which is awesome. I love it. So nice. I think you can definitely do like more still with just like a decal with just like some dirt, right? I don't know if that was still missing or still planned to do, but you can definitely do more with that. Especially, I think maybe that hasn't been touched as much, but like, yeah, just spreading out like the dirt still a little bit. That would definitely help it. Because I think you're looking for generalized feedback and suggestions to push it to the final bit of quality. Usually when it comes to like the final bit of quality, right, I'll make like a generalized note. My final pass, when I'm getting close to like finishing something, what I'll look into is creating variation or creating like a visual variation. Let's call it that. And that is usually the thing that I talk about when I'm talking about like adding character, right? So in practice, what that means is I will look at the entire scene, and then I'll be looking at stuff like this, where I'm like, this one tile, wouldn't it be nice if it's like slightly misaligned, where it's just like it's almost petering over the edge, right? So doing that little bit, like you said, the splinters and the nails, they could be like really nice because you could have like those rustic square nails in here, and then you could have, well, probably collapsed inwards, right? So then you could have like a broken plank, and then you could have just like fucking splinters coming from it. The same here, just a bunch of splinters. It's gonna look good because sometimes you will have like those beams that like crack halfway through, but they're not like fully cracked. If you just add one of those, like it kind of breaks up the repetition, right? Because otherwise you just have like one of these here, one of these here, one of these here. You kind of want to break down that repetition and again create like visual variation, right? Let's see. Let's grab another example here. The tiles, right? I think we brought that up last time. Might still be on your to-do list. It's just like grabbing one of these tiles and just like slightly rotating them. Like I'm picking this one because it's like in an empty space, and then just have like a part of it just like covered in sand or dirt. And then you can do the same thing with the wood planks as well. I like the way that you have your visual variations right now set up already, but I would still love to have it like a little bit more exaggerated. So yeah, maybe having, and this is literally what I would do. Hey, thank you so much for the follows, Prawa. Appreciate it. So what I would do is I would literally go in with like a soft selection brush on like these planks, and I would just like push and pull them apart, just like slightly. So that if I were to do like a little overpaint here, so that we're adding this kind of stuff to the whole place, right? We're just kind of pushing it more. Really, this is like the final stuff, right? Like just the final 5% is just really pushing a couple of planks and then maybe making them shorter as well. Breaking up like an edge here and there. Like this sort of stuff like adds a lot. So you want to put more variation to your edges. One thing I noticed while we were doing this is that you can actually do a lot of cool stuff with the blood that's here, right? I would find a way to cut out the blood that is like in between these tiles. Because I would assume that this currently is just like a decal, right? But if we break that up, right, we're breaking it up in like all these places. Again, it's going to feel like it's more conforming to the surface, first of all. But what that's also doing, and this is a great opportunity. I think what that's also going to do is it's going to add like a little bit of a highlight on like these edges. And that's just going to make them stand out a little bit more. Right, so we're getting like a little bit of a highlight compared to what we had before, right? So you can kind of see this is the before and this is the after. It's literally small stuff, but it makes such a difference, right? I would, whenever you're trying to concentrate on where to do this, I would also try to bring it around your focal point, right? So that's why I'm spending a lot of time like trying to get those details working really nicely around here, because this is what a lot of people are going to focus on. So I want to spend all of my time focusing around this area, and then maybe I can do stuff around the area as well, but like majority of my focus should be here, right? So yeah, the final pass, like I said, it's kind of all about visual variation. And you're not doing any rebaking, you're not doing any retexturing. Well, for the most case, you're just trying to find like quick and easy wins for this, right? So like I talked about soft selection, right? It's a big one in this pass. Because now I can just go in and like deform all the geometry that I have without having to do like any big sort of adjustments, right? This sort of subtle stuff I can get away with just doing with like a soft selection brush. But yeah, that's gonna make a huge difference. The blood is gonna go off the edges as well. I think what we also talked about last time, let me see if this actually works. I'm going to put it into practice a little bit because we do have a little bit more time today. Is let's see. I kind of want to bring out like the center of the space a little bit more, like the center of the door. Right? I kind of want to highlight that a little bit more. If we put that at like, I don't know, 50, 25, something like that. But like I'm trying to highlight the door just a little bit more, so that we get like a little bit more of an interesting light that's coming from the back end of things. So brighten the center. Hello, Tala. Welcome, welcome. Bagman is saying, am I tripping or do the roof tiles look kind of bright and distracting? I think in the general scheme of things, like it's not too bad actually. Because the focal point is so bright that we kind of do need to make them visible, but we don't want to make them too visible, right? So yeah. This is obviously where we go into like subjective territory, right? Like we could darken these down, and I think in post-processing, if you put like a vignette on it, like that could also help, or in Unreal, whatever you want to do. So that can definitely help with that as well. Let's see. Yeah. We were talking about doing these small adjustments, right? So when it comes to small adjustments, what we could also do is we would make... let's see if that works. Yeah, there we go. We're doing very subtle stuff now, right? But this is what it's all about. If we make the core of our light lighter, right? The core of the gate. If we then do the same thing to like where the blood, or like not the blood, like the light is spilling out into the scene, like it's gonna help us like draw the attention to like this person that's standing here as well. And maybe we could even like separate them a little bit more from the background by having like a lighter color. Yeah. I still want to do something about like this bench over here. I think this is a perfect case of adding just like a little bit of more geometry specifically on this one bench and just bending it slightly, right? So what that could mean is that instead of like this straight line that we have here, we would just get like a little bit of a curve in there. Because if we don't do that, like it kind of feels really simplistic, but as soon as you add like a little bit of a curve in there, like we're getting the feel that this is like just like, oh, this is like a really old pew, right? And again, we're not doing any retexturing, we're not doing any of that at this stage. We're just trying to get the most out of things that we have. The reason why you could potentially only get away with doing it with this one is that the other ones, they're kind of more hidden, so I care less about them, which is fine, right? Like, again, we want to focus on the stuff that is in view and most important to us. Alexander is saying, can be less darker in the walls. I can't see the information on the walls. Would like to see the roof with more light too. So this is where it gets really interesting, right? Because on my screen, there's a difference in screens too, right? Which we kind of have to take into account. On my screens, it's actually like really nice, but if I look at the stream, it comes out a little bit darker as well. So this is where it comes to like, you cannot you just have to assume that like people on the other side have like a decent screen so that they can kind of see what they want to see, right? And I'm not talking about like people in chat right now. I'm just talking about like the people that you would want to see your artwork, right? Like recruiters or people at a studio or whatever. Because yeah, otherwise you can just like keep tweaking this back and forth. Magma is saying, I think the only thing I'm not a big fan of in this image is the bright wall with the bricks. It looks really flat compared to the rest of the image. Are you talking about the wall in the back here? Guillaume, what are you doing to yourself? Oh my god. Bricks look very clean. Yeah, especially compared to the floor. Yeah, potentially. There could be like a little bit more color variation. Let's make a note of that. Honestly, at this point, Joe, I wouldn't even touch like an RGB mask, because that usually, if the person hasn't set that up yet, it usually means that like, oh my god, I need to set up a shader, I need to set up this and that. Again, final polish, slap decals on it, right? You can just make a decal in 5 minutes, slap it on there, and you're done. Like, I literally, at this point, I just want to get like whatever's the easiest. Just get it on there, because you can add like a bunch of decals on it before it becomes like less performant than actually having it in like an RGB mask and stuff. But yeah, at the end of this, at the end of the day, like it's just decals. Just slap decals on the whole thing. Oh yeah. Yeah, ideally you would have like 2 identical screens, but I get it. For the longest time I had 2 like different screens as well, with like 2 different color spectrums and all that stuff too. So I do get it. When we're talking about like these lights, what actually could be cool and could be helpful is making them less apparent than they are now, because I kind of feel that we just have like a floating point light, and it's like even in front of the whole thing. Right? What I would expect is a point light above it, so that you cast like a shadow that goes downwards. Right? Because with the flames, like you're gonna have like your bright spots here, so you're gonna cast a shadow like underneath it, right? And I think that could even help with just the balance of the scene in general, by just turning them down slightly. You also want to kind of make it so that the light feels like it's the actual light in the scene, right? I think for these guys it works because like we're just projecting upwards, right? But for like a downwards projection, you want to do it a little bit different. Yeah. The final pass, like all the stuff that I've shown about like the visual variation, and also just like the soft selection stuff where you can just like squish stuff just a little bit, that can be applied to so much stuff. Like you could literally have like this section over here and like bend outwards, right? And it kind of gives like way more character to like the whole church as a result. Right? Because now we're not looking at like a really nice construction. We're probably looking at something that has been here for ages. And it gives character to the whole place. Right? And this is all stuff that you can still do. You're literally just taking stuff that's already here, picking the top vertex point, and you're just moving it with a soft selection. This stuff is going to make a huge difference. You can apply that to so many things. Right? Like, this looks really nice because it is offset from this guy, and this kind of has like a curve to it. That looks nice. That's what gives it like that handmade like character, right? So yeah, I think that's good in terms of feedback. Yeah, awesome seeing Tobias. I think, like you said, you're like in the final home stretch now, so keep it up. Make sure that you ask feedback to like other people as well. Make sure that you have like multiple people giving you feedback, giving you like a to-do list before you post it off. But yeah, great work, man. I think the stuff that you had planned already is really good, and that's definitely going to push it to the next level too. Together with all this stuff, I think it's going to be nice, man. It's going to be nice to see. Yeah, awesome work. And thank you for showing it with us too. Next one up, Moonlight. Or Guillaume. Let's see. No question. Let's see. This is the last prop from the concept art from Jamilia Bukarina. Once again, this high quality, low poly process. Sculpting the ZBrush is time consuming. I wanted to be more efficient with it and keep my shapes sexy, not to create too much detail, and do as little as possible with the brushes. Oh, just asking about the proportions. Okay. Well, what I would say about the proportions is do the exact same exercise as I'm doing right here, right? Like try to get like the proportions or like the angles, like the camera angles to line up, and then have a look for yourself. Right? So that is like one thing that I will do as well, where I'll compare and contrast and I'll put them next to each other so that I can see them like as close to one as I can get, right? Because proportions is all about comparison. So from that, what I can see immediately is that the shape of the eyes, right, is like slightly different. It looks like yours, they kind of have like the right shape here on this side, where it's almost like it's a rounded cube, right? But I think for the most part, you just end up with like a circle that kind of goes into like a rounded cube at like the end. So yeah, that's something to try to mimic. It's a very specific shape of eye though. So it's very, very tricky. Boolean operation is difficult within ZBrush. Yeah, I mean, if you're more comfortable with doing it in Blender, you can also just do it in Blender, right? And the teapot is not aligned face to the camera, so it's harder to get the shapes. Yeah, I think what you want to have, especially looking at like the way that this is laid out, you kind of want to go for that chunky kind of feel, right? Where they almost have like a really nicely defined like shape that comes through it. You can almost like draw over it and kind of feel it that way, right? Whereas yours is just like it's more smooth and it's more rounded, right? So you kind of want to make it more chunky, right? Which is always a good thing in my opinion for anything stylized, just to make it more chunky. Get those like shapes in there, and then maybe once you get those like strong shapes, then smoothing it out a little bit can work. But if you lose that sense of identity of that shape, it feels like you've gone too far, right? So yeah, just kind of doing the same as they're doing. And then having that lip on there as well, that's going to help too. And you kind of want to exaggerate like all the shapes in there. Which is cool. Chunky would make it more stylized. I'm still dealing to get that. Yeah, I think that's what, to me, the core of, well, it's not the only thing, right? But it's one of the main factors in making something feel stylized. It is, I would even say, and I've always said this, is like with realistic, you have more examples. So in my opinion, getting something to like somewhat realistic looking is always easier than making something that is well executed and stylized. Because what stylized really comes down to is a thorough knowledge of like how to use shape language and more of your artistic fundamentals, right? So you can kind of see that I'm trying to do that now, where this sort of stuff, like the stuff that I'm trying to do here, like that is really common when you're drawing anatomy, right? Because in anatomy class, what you try to do is you try to look at the human body and the proportions and the muscles and the structure of it, and you try to simplify that to like the most basic shapes as possible. And I feel like good stylized work, or like especially this range of stylized work, leans into that a lot, right? Where it's like about very strong and recognizable like silhouettes and shapes, right? Let's have a look. I'm gonna assume that like the little ribbon is still like a work in progress. Feels like most of this stuff is looking really nice though. Like the way that this is starting to come together, it's starting to look really nice. It kind of gets that more like sharp shape, right? I can recognize the transitions in the shapes more. So that stuff is coming along pretty nicely. We got the eyes. Got like the hands are almost like they're sort of almost touching, right? In terms of proportions, the leg should be a bit smaller and the bottom and the top half of the pot should be a bit thicker. You are right. Yeah, that's a good observation. We can kind of see like the legs are maybe like a little bit more stumpy, right? And then the pot kind of like widens out. Again, it's about that like really recognizable shape, right? And the same here. You kind of want to exaggerate that with the shapes. And what I really like is like this cut, you know? It's not like a perfect teapot, but it's like dunk. You kind of get that cut in there too. Just like really nice. And my belly. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that's a great little point to bring up. And then yeah, with the handle here, you can make it wider. And again, also if you like nail, like you kind of want to make this wider and then make the actual handle of it like way thinner, right? Like, but it all comes down to getting those shapes in there, right? Oh, that one? It's maybe a little too thin. I'm kind of seeing like a transition from somewhat thin here to like maybe like a little bit thicker over here. It's kind of happening too. So thinner and wider. But yeah. It's a good starting point though. Like I like... You got the core shapes, right? Right? Like all the core proportions are there. It's just about like pushing and pulling just a little bit. So I think you're doing great. Yeah. Thanks so much for showing it off, Moonlight. And best of luck. I'm looking forward to seeing the next update, even though you're going to be pretty busy with the team challenge. So good luck with that too. Next up on the list is Alex Vanilla. Dang, Alex. This looks awesome. So I saw this before the stream, obviously, right? Oh, sorry, different Alex. Sorry. But yeah, I saw this before the stream, and way better in terms of composition, right? Like, this composition is way more engaging and way more thought out than the previous one was. And I feel like you did a good job with getting people interested in playing around with the shape language of the gate in the back, right? Because kind of like everything is kind of like blocky, squarish, all that kind of stuff. But then you have like a nice circular elements at the back that just contrast like against like the other parts of the environment, right? Is this the one I think it is? I'll show a comparison because I think it is definitely worth showing off. So let me bring it up on screen. This was the previous one, right? So this is what we looked at last week. And now we have this. Like, massive difference. Like I said, just way more engaging, like way more interesting to look at. Like Magma is saying, crazy improvement. Good stuff, Alex. I completely agree. This is awesome. Let me read into what Alex is saying, right? So I've changed the composition a lot, narrowing my scope and the idea. Yes, so see, this is like an important benefit of it too, right? This is what I was trying to explain last time as well, is that if you find like these blockers or these ways where you can like kind of condense the amount of stuff that you have to make, that is like an additional win. Also cleaning up your composition too. So you're getting like 2 birds with 1 stone, right? This is awesome. So yeah, you narrowed your scope and your idea. I think I'm headed in the right direction with the composition. Oh yeah. No, you're definitely in the right direction with the composition. I think there's not that much more to do here. Like the base of the composition is awesome, right? Really solid. Now it just comes down to you about like how you're gonna arrange like the details or like the secondary stuff, right? And how far you want to go with like signaling towards the final point. Because the thing that I like about this is, or this scene currently, is that we don't have to try and make it work. Like the scene itself fundamentally is guiding us towards like the end, right? Which is awesome. So that means that we don't have to do like all these things that I was saying last week, where you kind of want to have like a separation in like, I don't know, tiles to kind of guide you towards the end, because the composition is taking care of all of it now. Which means that it gives you more freedom. It gives you more freedom to play around with things that you would want to play around with, right? Well, Alex, I'm gonna ask this question to you. What is your next plan, right? Let me know that first, and then we can talk about it more. So like I was saying, you have like a good solid composition as well. Like you got the fundamentals in place. So that gives you more freedom now to actually add whatever you want to add, right? There is a question that I brought up last week, which I'll kind of repeat. And that is like, we're guiding people to here effectively, right? You've done that beautifully. Now, what is here? What do you want me to look at? Right? that is a question that I have right now, where I'm like, okay, there's something interesting happening. And I'll say this, like, you don't really need to do a whole lot more, right? So you don't really need to do like a whole bunch more on top of this to make it work, but it is a good opportunity to then do additional things where you can add like a little bit more to the storytelling. I'm just gonna name random stuff as I always do, right? Like, I'm imagining that this is like the only like late night restaurant that is still open. So I'm imagining like this area is completely closed, like all the shops are closed, the tables are turned on their heads, whatever, right? It all looks like it's closed, but then you have this one shop that still has like the lights on, and it's kind of creating just like this atmosphere of like, oh, this is like the last shop in town that's open. It's like a little bit of a story, right? That's basically what I'm hinting at here. Because, yeah, there's something to keep in mind, right? Like, story is always something that I use as like, okay, like I'm guiding people towards like a point, but what do I want to say with that, right? So you want to fix the base meshes. Okay. But that's an easy thing, right? What is your plan going forward? Like, apart from fixing the base meshes, give me some other ideas too. Then in the meantime, we'll have a look. Well, I have to go. Bye, Guillaume. See you next week. Thanks for checking in. And good luck with the team challenge. Bugman saying some plants, vegetation, and such would be great. Yeah, exactly. I think that could definitely help. Like anything in general that is man-made, if you can even read that, because oh my god, my handwriting today. Man-made versus... It's one of those things where they're really, really effective of creating a contrast between the two, right? Alex is saying, I'll think more about it. Okay. So that's the reason, like, I didn't want to just say it during this session because, I mean, it is a session that's meant to help you, right? But I'm not going to be there, like, every week necessarily. So I think this comes down to, like, okay, we fixed the composition. What plan do you have going forward, right? I don't know, maybe you're also doing like a bunch of other stuff, right? So there's probably like other stuff on your mind. But it's really important to kind of have a list for yourself to be like, okay, what if I fix the composition? What is the next step? What is the next step, right? Because we're always trying to go from, you have like a little to-do list over here, right? So number one is the composition. Cool. That's done. Number two, to me, is a story. Right? The composition is fixed. Now, I want to see what the story is and how we're going to add to it. Right? So, because the story is then also going to have effect on, like, the stuff that's going to happen downstream as well. Because then it becomes like, okay, like these two are fundamentals, right? They're fundamental aspects. Once we got the fundamentals out of the way, it just becomes time to like, okay, now I just need to like make it look good. Add the assets that I needed to add, right? So the assets are then going to inform like what sort of assets and especially hero assets. Like hero assets I define as things that are important to the story, right? Like without those assets, like I cannot see what the story is without those assets. And then we're just gonna go down the list, right? There's also gonna be supporting assets. Which are assets that are there to support the world building, right? So for example, you have like a bunch of tables. It's in the middle of the day, so I'm assuming that you're also gonna have like tablecloths and maybe, I don't know, like little menus or plates, cups, all that kind of stuff, right? Whatever you want to do out of that list, that's up to you. But I'm expecting something to kind of sell the fantasy that this is like a town that is bustling, right? That has like people drinking and relaxing and all that kind of stuff. But that's all gonna be supportive to that story, you see? So like everything that I'm saying here kind of follows downstream from that story. Like Magma is saying as well, what is the story of this shot? Is this from the perspective of a tourist or something? That could be an interesting angle to explore too, where you say, okay, what am I looking at, right? Like if we then turn that into like what Magma is saying, like the perspective of a tourist, you could then be like, oh, that shop in the back is gonna be like an antique shop, right? Like let's imagine that this tourist is looking for like special kind of stuff to bring home to like his grandmother or whatever, right? Like that story is for you to fill in, but like whatever direction you pick in that story kind of allows you to then be like, okay, this is a cool story. Now I know what I need to make for that story. And then definitely what was added up here. Some foliage will definitely do, but that is more just like set dressing, right? I would even say, if we go back a little bit, supporting assets are things that will support like this location, whereas set dressing is more to... how are we going to differentiate between the two? Let me try this, right? We're gonna try an exercise live. The supporting assets are more for the location specifically. This means that, for example, if we have that antique store, you would probably have like a couple of antiques like on the outside, right? Or maybe like a plate or a sign saying that it's like an antique store. Something to kind of support that, right? Whereas like a set dressing to the world is more like the cups and like the things that is like more from like a logical sense, right? Like a logical place. Bagman saying, I feel like the circles around the gate feel a bit more off to the rest of the environment. Maybe go for something more traditional. That kind of depends on what the inspiration comes from, right? Because what I do like it in terms of like shapes, and this is coming from a person who doesn't know what like traditional this sort of architecture necessarily looks like, right? So that might be something to explore. But like I said, I like the shape variation. So that could be something to look into. Question mark. Maybe some food for research. Yeah, hope that was helpful, Alex. And yeah, great stuff. Great stuff on adjusting the scene. This is awesome. Yeah, keep it up, man. Music going hard today? Yeah, this is like my old school medieval playlist when I was still building my own scene, right? For those who remember. It's basically my nostalgia music now. Hello, Tobias. Hope you're doing well, buddy. We already talked about your work before. It was looking really nice, man. Really great suggestions. Or like really great adjustments, sorry. Let's see. Now it's your turn, Alexander. Made some adjustments, get one focal point, and created an open path as you suggested. I applied the rule of thirds. Also, along the open path, I placed some statues reminiscent of the White Kingdom. Lead to the final area used for level design. Appreciate any kind of feedback on the composition, storytelling, and lighting. Okay, so a couple things. This is where it gets tricky, right? Like, because whenever I give feedback, I'm not too sure how the person on the other end is going to interpret that. What I mean by that is that you got this road leading up here, right? But now it looks forced. Do you see what I mean? So I think it's nice to have something where you're like leading people along the lines, right? You're kind of trying to like hide something from them, which is fine. But now this kind of feels like, oh, it needs to be like entirely in our view, which kind of makes it feel very artificial, right? So that's what it's currently kind of feeling like, because we just have like this straight line, and that's never really a good thing, right? So you could potentially like break it up by having it go like around the corner, and then maybe like it goes invisible, right? So imagine like there's like a little section here walking your way, and then we kind of see it like going up onto the bridge. You don't have to exactly do that. But that could be one option. You could have like Mama is saying, you could have it like go deeper as well, and then it kind of disappears and goes onto the bridge. But yeah, currently it kind of feels like very straightforward. But I think the biggest thing though is that interestingly enough, you took out like the most interesting piece of the whole environment, which I mean, I recognize why you did it, right? Because last time we talked about like, oh, you have two focal points and like they're kind of competing with each other, and I don't think like it's one is doing the service to the other, right? So, but what I kind of trying to think here, right? Because that's what we talked about, right? That's exactly what was said. But I feel like keeping this here instead of having this like very unique looking thing at the end kind of defeats the purpose. Whereas I think what you needed to do, and let's actually go back to last week, is that if we copy this image, because I think in terms of uniqueness, I think you had something like really solid going here already, right? It is just that you gotta be careful with then having like this section here trying to compete with that, right? But what I would definitely keep is this, because this looks like awe-inspiring, really unique, very mysterious, right? It invites you to think about like a lot of intriguing subjects, and it's like, oh, what the hell is this? And it kind of adds like a lot of character to the scene that we're currently seeing, right? And if you take that out of it, then we kind of lose whatever that initial intrigue was all about. Right? It doesn't have that intrigue. It's probably the best way that I can describe it. So I would definitely bring that back. Maybe what you could try is integrating one into the other. I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but it's worth a try, where you shrink this whole thing down, right? So you shrink like this entire base down. Let's say I'm just going to work in shapes, right? So we kind of have like this main square shape here, And then we kind of have that sort of circle, like slanted, like leaning in, like almost out of the city somehow. I'm not sure how this is going to make sense, right? I'm just thinking in terms of like shapes and composition. But having something that kind of, we're thinking about like creative solutions without sacrificing on what made it unique in the first place, right? You could also just like really shrink this entire city down and just make it all about like this big disc that is just here, right? Like the only things that you really need is just having like, I don't know, some sort of like a gate structure, right? And then maybe you would have like, I don't know, some watchtowers on the side. You can probably make it feel like more unique as well, instead of like just a big box, right? Because you're working with modular pieces anyway. Right, and really play around with the shape a little bit. It's fun doing a little bit of sketching. Keep most of that. Let's actually... Oh. Hello. What happened? Right, so we're really trying to reduce what did it look like. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but because yeah, like the core components that we need is like we kind of want to make it a place that people travel to from far and wide, right? That's the kind of like awe-inspiring thing that we kind of wanna keep, and then we can kind of build something of like a church-like, or I don't know, place of congregation like right next to it. But it doesn't need to necessarily be like a whole city, right? So yeah, think about it more as in like a site of pilgrimage. That is like maybe like the seat of, you can make it like a seat of power or like a site of pilgrimage or whatever you want to do, right? But it doesn't necessarily need to have like a full build-up city next to it. But yeah, this is honestly like, this is really interesting to bring up. Like this whole topic of like trying to identify what is most interesting about your art and what makes it feel unique, because there's a lot of times where you're gonna have to make sacrifices in terms of scope or in terms of like timeline or whatever, right? And you have to do that in a way without sacrificing like the core intent or the core concept behind your art, right? So that's why I think the idea behind potentially merging the two focal points into one could be an interesting one. That is one idea. That is one option that we had, right? The other option that you could do is going back to what you had like last week and then just really shrinking down like the size of the city and making it more just like a couple of things that are scattered upon the hills, and like maybe people are living in caves upon the hills, all that kind of stuff. But it's all in service to this big thing in the back, right? So if we then go back to like this, because I actually do like that we have, what we do have here is that we kind of have like this, it kind of takes you for a ride, right? Like we're looking at it from like, this is a very interesting like layered composition that's going on right now. The only thing that's really just like from like a distraction or like a compositional point of view is that this is too distracting when it comes to that, right? So I would just like reduce the amount of this and focus more on this in the end. But see, these are like two completely different choices that have a completely different impact on like your whole environment. So it's the choice is up to you, right? Like what you do with it. Tomb Raider concept art would be a great ref as well. We give a good example of focal points. In Tomb Raider's case, a relic or a rune or a structure. Yeah, I bet you there's like a bunch of really cool stuff out there. Magma is saying, instead of using, maybe instead of the gap, add more mountains and such. Oh, the gap that is now open? Yeah. Yeah, that's also another thing that could be interesting to bring up, is that right now this gap that has been left behind kind of feels like, oh, there's something there, right? So you want me to look at it. Exactly. I think if you then want to keep this like this kind of like structure, you kind of want to build it up, have like a mountain range, and then just like build it down, so that we're kind of like we're trying to do this line that kind of comes down onto the main shape, right? A little bit beside the point, but it's a great point in terms of like this shape just being really distractive, right? Because it is oftentimes what we call like negative space. Right? And it's the contrast between like something that is built up with nothing in between. And in anything that has a contrast, especially close together, that's where we focus or can focus, right? Like it draws our attention in. Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful, Alex. Best of luck. It's not an easy scene. I mean, this is huge, right? Like we talked about before. So spending a lot of time here makes a lot of sense. So don't try to rush into things. Make sure that the fundamentals are rock solid before you move on to the next stage, because whatever you're going to do afterwards is going to be exponentially more costly in terms of time later down the line. So do try to figure it out here before moving on to the next step. Shazar brought up a good point with the path in the beginning as well. You could easily reduce the amount of work making the path if you just hit it with a cliff or trees. To be fair, that's what that was my complaint last time, where we couldn't see enough of the path, but that is exactly what Alex had. So yeah, it's always an interesting like balance, right? Like how much do you show, like how much do you hide, like all that stuff. Maybe now that I'm looking at this, like it wasn't that bad of a thing, but yeah. Yeah. No worries, Alexander. Best of luck. Oh my god, these scribbles. Scribbles of a madman. Yeah, thank you so much for showing your work, Alex. Next one up. Demi-Axes. I would appreciate any feedback to help me improve it further. I aim to achieve the most realistic material possible. Looking for some general feedback. Honestly, some of the stuff that we talked about last time does still apply. I would first of all look at the references that you have, right? And try to get as close to them as possible. But I would literally try to kill like anything that is straight. Like this entire line, especially in this one screenshot, just being like really straight. That's the stuff that you have to avoid, right? So that is things that I think we brought that up last time as well. But that is still there. I think what you did do, not mistaken, that you try to vary like some of these guys, maybe in height. Yeah, so we can kind of see that the height has some nice variation. Right, so like the height of this border, variation there. It's looking quite nice, but it's height, its rotation, its location, like we're thinking in like multiple dimensions, so make use of all of them, right? Scale, rotation, translation. Think about all those things that you could use. There is some stuff here that I wanted to point out as well. Is that you get some... I think this might be clipping or something like that. The only reason why I think it's clipping is because on other areas it actually looks quite nice. Where you have like the gradient happening. Like here, it's literally just like a straight line. Where it transitions from like water into asphalt like immediately. So something weird is going on there. Let's see. And also breaking up like this edge as well. Having like more puddles, less puddles. Breaking up that straight line again. Not enough potholes if it's a UK road. It looks like, and this would be like a GeoGuessr thing, I guess, right? But it looks like it's American? American or Canadian, right? What do we think? But yeah, it's especially the breakup, right? That I really want to focus on this time around. Canadian? Awesome. I mean, I just literally threw like 2 big countries on there, but... Oh, that is fair. That is fair, Magma. I didn't think about that. Dang. That is a good giveaway, though. Let's see. What else can we add? Yeah, I think those are like the observations that I can make immediately. If you really want to push it to like the next level, you just have to look at like your references and really push it to like the next level by just like trying to translate all the little details into it, right? Actually, one of our recent workshops does a good job about talking about like those like specific details that you can add, like the one that we did with Javier Perez. Really insightful when it comes to it. What I will say, if you wanna push it like to the next level, then you will have to look into like making it more unique in terms of like having chewing gum, having bird poop, having like all those like little things that you see on like a day-to-day basis. You will have to integrate them somehow as well, right? But the thing is, this is still a substance designer material, right? So the more stuff you do when it comes to that, like it's still good to show from like a skill perspective, but it makes the actual material like less usable, right? That's what we talked about last time, the actual usability within games or the actual like chase for realism, right? Like they kind of diverge from this point on. So yeah, like cigarette butts, falling leaves, chewing gum, bird poop, like all those little things. Not sure why my comment keeps getting deleted. I'm not sure if it gets deleted. I still see all your comments, buddy. Weird. Huh. Cigarette butts, trying to post a link. That might be it. Yeah, I think links are blocked. Yeah, what did we say? Fallen leaves. Some dirt on the edges, right? Like more dirt on the edges. Yeah. oil stains from cars and such. Yeah, those are all good ideas, right? Like whatever you want to add that is like, but it's all very unique stuff. But if you are hunting for that realism, that's the stuff that we want to see, right? Little sections of moss, like little bits of foliage growing out of it, like that could actually be like really interesting. Yeah, that's a great suggestion for the moss. I like that. Paint breakup on the curb. That's a good point as well. Oh, you could do scratches from like people driving onto the curb and like scratching their rims on it. It could be cool. Moss in between the bricks would be insanely good. Yeah. That's a good idea. I like that. We are descending, chat. We are. Yeah. But I hope that helped, Damiaxis. Yeah, this is looking really good. If you wanna focus on those details, go out and look for them. I think honestly that's the best way to do it. Thank you guys for the feedback. I will work on those. Yeah, thanks everybody for chiming in as well. That was really helpful. Cool. Final two for the day. First one from Anton. Anton made a cool looking cabinet with a shit ton of pictures. So I only took a couple because, oh my god, there were a lot. My question is, what can be improved and added to this prop? Because I'm already done with what I've seen on my references and I'm open to feedback. All textures and height maps were made in Substance Designer. Made two tiling wood materials or like textures and combined them with a lot of masks. Metal texture was made on a separate texture in Substance Painter. Okay. Let's have a look-see. All right, so first thing that I'm seeing, so the bottom here is all the ref, right? The first thing that I'm seeing is that you can potentially do way more with this sort of like dust and like what is that? I guess it's not dust, it's like varnish or oil or something like that from like trying to like polish it up, but it like creeped into like all the corners and it just tainted the wood in like a different manner, right? That would be a case where you could vary up all that information. But like, especially the mask itself, right? Because it is pretty uniform. It just has, there's a little bit of variation in there, but if you want to make it look like really nice, you want to put like a more unique variation in areas, right? So that one side goes up higher than the other, another one goes down again, another one maybe has this build up in this corner. You want to vary up your masking by a lot as well. Another thing is that it kind of feels, again, a thing that I bring up a lot is that everything feels like straight, right? Straight upon straight upon straight. Try to find ways to showcase like these little differences in like panel lines and stuff, for example, right? But a great example of a reference picture here, like the panels are like slightly misaligned, right? And this sort of stuff makes like a huge difference. It makes it feel like someone actually built this with their hands, right? And we can then take that and then exaggerate it for the purposes of our game, right? So we need to, yeah, just exaggerate it. How do you spell that? Oh my god, I don't know how to spell that. Looking this up. I just looked it up and I bet you that I'm still gonna spell it wrong. Thanks for the help. We're seeing this pattern a lot where artists make their stuff too perfect and too straight. Yeah, exactly. And I feel honestly that's why a lot of this stuff feels like it's 3D. It's because they're not taking the time to then push and pull a little bit. Like the stuff that I talked about before with Tobias's work, for example, where you need to take the time to go in with like a soft selection brush and just like squish and pull and like do those final tweaks, because they're gonna make a whole world of difference, right? Same is happening here. Everything is straight upon straight upon straight. Like I want to see some wonkiness, I want to see some curviness, I want to see yeah, I want to see those details. Talking about details, where's this guy? Where is that panel? Oh, that's here. Yeah, talking about details. Okay. Here we go. Those details are really cool. They're like structural details, because that means that this like panel behind it, you can probably, it's probably going to be, let's see, probably something like this here, where like that plug goes into this bracket and kind of holds it in place, right? Like those details are awesome. And that is it's literally just like a normal stamp, right? You just stamp that on your model, looks good. Cool. Another detail, like as we're zooming in, looks really nice as well. Probably just stamp that on there. Get like a couple of edges that are like a bit more broken up, right? You kind of have like some of that stuff going on, which is quite nice. Yeah. Again, like breaking up this edge as well. The way that you can do that, if you're just using like a tileable, or if you're baking, you have to build that into like your high poly, right? Your sculpt or whatever. If this is like, let's say your low poly and you're just building it mostly with textures, just add a bevel, right? And vary that bevel up. We're exaggerating here. This is not how crazy you want to go with it. But you can just make that look more interesting by just adding like a little bit more geometry in like a couple of places, right? Ideally, if you're looking for those details, you actually want to do them on the silhouette, because they have like a bigger impact. But yeah, those changes in silhouette make like a huge difference as well. Ideally, you want to do that on like the top, right? Or like on the sides or something like that. Yeah. Oh god. Trim is looking good. Yeah. Yeah, overall, like the texture's looking really, really nice already. Really looking good. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that you get so close to it, but then you can still tell that like there's a difference between like the texture detail that you have here compared to what you are doing, right? It's missing all those layers still. Yeah. I would say that would be like a good thing to look at. Like I can point them all out, but that would kind of be like a waste of time, right? Because you have a fantastic amount of like references. I picked like 4 pictures, but there's like at least, I don't know, at least 10, if not 15 or like 20. So you have like a bunch of really awesome pictures. It's just about like really analyzing what is happening and understanding what is happening and then trying to reflect that into your scene as well, right? And then also looking at like what it's gonna do to the roughness, because I mean we're not seeing too much of it here, but I'm assuming that like when you're gonna have like a texture difference, for example, like the blackened edges, they're gonna have like a slightly different like roughness result as well. So keep that in mind too. This has a background assets looks insanely good. I don't think there's even any work, any need to do work on it any further. I don't know what it will be used for though. Well, that's the thing, right? Like I'm assuming that if you put this much detail into something, it's not going to be a background asset. This is going to be like an asset by itself on your portfolio. And if if Anton wants to push it further, I'm assuming that that would be the case, right? You can honestly make like a lot of wins by just improving like your lighting setup. I know that this is like the lighting setup that you had, but or like the scene setup that you have. But I think you can pick something more interesting. You know, like it looks kind of boring and dull. Like in terms of like the lighting setup, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. It looks a lot better than a lot of the assets that I've already seen, right, on ArtStation and stuff, because you're actually taking the step of like putting it in an environment, trying to render it properly, all that kind of stuff, and you're getting like some really beautiful things out of it. But yeah, try to see what is the best environment for the prop. You could potentially use a trim in the future. Yeah, for sure. It depends on how the trim is laid out as well. That is true. Okay. Thank you so much, Anton. Good luck with that. That was looking really nice. Okay. Last one for today. We got a Sanji. I want to know, what do you think about the new thinner road? There's a couple of questions here. So the new thinner road, compared to last time, it's looking all right. You just compare it to like the older one. Thank you for the feedback. No worries. No worries. Happy to help. Germany. Could be, or like Italy or something like that. Ristorante, yeah. It is Italy. Yeah, what do I think about the new thinner road? So, I mean, it's an interesting question, but I don't know what that would lead to, if you know what I mean. I'm getting like really philosophical here. But like, so in general, like the smaller road didn't really affect like anything really, apart from it feeling like a potentially like a smaller town now, right? So that's like the only change that I can see with like the smaller road, and then like the composition changed a little bit, but yeah, I mean it's looking good. It's looking good. Like I think it still suffers from like the same things that were happening with the other road as well, is that it was kind of feeling like a little bit flat, right? And you try to remedy that with adding like a lot of stuff on the edges, which is great, right? I love that change already. but the main texture still looks and feels the same, right? And it's very uniform. So we would actually need to find a way. Oh, hold up. You actually would need to find a way to break up like this texture over here, because the edges are like really good. We would just need to find like a way to add some breakup in this area. The scene looked a bit empty to me. Yeah, but I don't think the road necessarily changed anything to that. You know what I'm saying? Like the road itself, like shrinking it down, didn't really change like how empty the scene feels. Like that didn't really change anything. If you honestly want to change like how the scene feels and why it feels so empty, this is also why I was kind of excited to see you work on like something new, right? Because like if you want to make something feel more, what do you say, like more alive, more in depth, more lived in, like all those kind of things, like it just comes down to changing the composition and like changing the scene as well, right? So for example, if we have, let's see what we can do. Oh, you know what I might do? We are gonna copy. We are gonna shrink this all the way down. So if we have like a different composition, and we kind of build it in such a way that we don't have to set dress too much, that is actually like a more effective way of then like condensing like the amount of stuff that we need to make, right? So for example, if we have this road and it kind of curves off to the right, but there's like a building over here, and we kind of don't see what's happening, and then you kind of just have like, I don't know, just like a couple more buildings. Maybe there's like something here around the corner, something like that. The mountain thing is still in the background. I don't really mind it that much. And then we kind of have like, I don't know, building here that kind of opens up. And then maybe there's like, boom. Little tables, maybe there's like a little terrace over here. Right, and then kind of could potentially do the same thing here as well. Let me see. How do we condense more of this scene? Let's imagine that this is like one of those bridges. We're kind of just making it like fully buildings at the moment, but hey, that's where we are. I hope these scribbles like make sense because it's freaking chaos. But what I'm trying to do is like, I'm trying to like really just like condense the amount of stuff that I need to do so that I don't need to create as much to then build a place up, right? Because now what you need to do is ideally, to make this feel alive, is you would need to have like a full, like something going on here, right? Like maybe like a couple of cars. Like I think we last time, maybe like a car or two here, like on the side road, like on the pavement. Oh my god, those cars are going to be way bigger, but you get what I mean. And then we still need to figure out like all this stuff too. Plus that this road doesn't really go anywhere interesting, so maybe we could, I don't know. There's like a lot of that comes from like just the composition in the beginning that has been. It's really hard for me to at this point like give any feedback that is not going to be about like, oh, next time I would just do like composition completely different. Because what I don't want to do is like go in here and destroy the whole thing and then tell you to go like, oh, it's better to start from scratch, right? Because it's not. You did like a whole bunch of work on here. But I kind of do want to see you move on to like the next thing, right? Because I feel like this one is going to be really hard to make really good without doing like a lot of time and a lot of work on it, right? So I would, let me think. Last week for this project? Yeah. Okay, so instead of that, let's focus on your questions first, and then we can dive into like what I would do for the last week. So the dry leaves in the grass, the green trees are not working according to me, and I was thinking if I should go for the festival mood and add some assets for that. Not really. Not really. I think it's okay, like the green grass and like the trees. I don't think they're too off-putting. Like what you could do is add some more like bushes here, right, to kind of fill it up. And maybe you have like, I don't know, some bigger bushes, some smaller bushes, like that sort of stuff like fills it up like really quickly. You can kind of then just like have them peek up here as well. So that's a way that you could like quickly fill something out as well. And then, yeah, that would be like a quick way of getting something here. That could be fun to play around with. In that case, I can replace the leaves with the confetti. No, I think the leaves are actually pretty cool. I think all the stuff that you did to the floor actually worked really well. I think what you could do with that is have it more directional, right? So I'm imagining like people coming from their driveway. So having like more sand here, that kind of indicates that like people are leaving and going like more. It doesn't have to be like a whole bunch of sand, but just like the indication of people like coming out of it, right? That could help as well. And then also doing the same thing with the road, just having like slightly darker areas, because you'll see that often if this is like a really old street, you'll see like the edges where like the cars have driven are like more worn compared to other areas. So that could be interesting. Yeah, let's see. Okay, let me go to, I'm playing, there's a lot going on in my head right now. We're gonna put that on paper just a bit. Let me go through the questions first. I need a recommendation on where I can learn about like splines and any other methods to add wires with flags. I don't think, well, I don't think you need to now, right? Because I don't think that's necessary. I would honestly, I mean, this is gonna sound ridiculous, but like just go on YouTube, right? Like there's probably like a bunch of stuff on splines that could work, because it also depends on like your modeling package too, if you want to do them in Unreal or not. What I would do, just because it's way quicker usually, is I would just model with a spline in whatever package you're using, right? And then just add like a couple of flags on it and just add that as like a static mesh into your scene, and just have it like with a connection point on like each end. And then you just have to like stretch it, upscale it, and like kind of put it into place. But then you don't have to worry about making like a blueprint and making it all like scale, all that kind of stuff, because that gets complicated really quick. So the easier you can do it, if you want to have flags, like that would be a way to do it. If you're just doing like a single pole or like a single texture or something like that, you could potentially do it with like, I don't know, something else. With like a spline in Unreal, for example. So let's go with your idea, right? We're adding bunting to like the whole scene. We kind of have them like crisscross a little bit as well. What could be interesting, and this is like very, I've seen this a lot, especially in like Italy and stuff. No, it's like you'll have those festivals, right? And they'll have like a banner. A banner in the middle of the scene. Just saying like festival, blah blah blah. Right? And then like the banners make sense as well. And then once you got those banners, once you got the assets, like you can just like use them to like hang them everywhere, which is pretty cool. So yeah, you could go with that idea. Right? And then what this also gives me, we're going to have to move some stuff around, right? But this gives me some flexibility to kind of control what's happening with the background. Because that's actually the thing that I was thinking about before. I kind of want to have something here so that we see less of the background, which is just like more cube-like buildings, right? So they don't look that interesting. So we wanna give this scene like the perception that it's really intricate and there's a lot of stuff going on by adding a bunch of stuff in the foreground and then potentially be using it in the background, but it doesn't have to be detailed or even make sense, right? So we added like all these banners, which are looking good. Make it a festival. You can even add like posters from the festival as well, right? You could do that. We have like some cars, just like something to add in the foreground. And then what I would do with the background is, we're talking about a festival. I wonder, I mean, they're background assets anyway. What you could do is do very simple blockouts and just make this more feel like a market square rather than anything else. So you could have little tents in the back where like people are selling like goods or something like that. Again, this might sound like really complex, but if it's in the back and you're never gonna zoom into it, you don't even have to worry about it being like noticeable, right? And again, maybe like one of these banners in the back. Let's do this guy. Then maybe you get like an indication of like the market continuing. Right? But what I'm trying to do here very deliberately is I'm trying to put stuff into place so that I don't have to then also add like a bunch of like detail to like the building in the back here, because it looks like really simplistic, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm thinking more about like a story, something of interest that I can add to the scene, but then also at the same time using those story elements to kind of reduce like the scope and the amount of work that is still need to be done, especially in like the back parts, right? Yeah, food stalls, whatever, right? Like some sort of stalls that can then link back to the festival that is happening, right? One simple way is showcasing something in the foreground and then using it repetitively in the background, right? So if you want to give this sense of like detail and that there's a lot of stuff going on, what you could do is you could add like a stall over here. How is this gonna work? Right, so you could add, and this is literally going to be blocked off, right? So you could add a stall over here, and they're selling like, oh, like all these nice cakes and all this kind of stuff. Like a lot of stuff is happening here. Maybe there's like a banner again or something like that, right? Hello? Can I erase? No. Which one is it? This one. And then what you oftentimes see on like food markets is that they have like a little plaque that says like a name, blah, 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 blah. And then what ideally happens, or what happens right now, is that I see this food stall here, right? Which has like a certain amount of detail. And I'm like, oh shit, there's like a bunch of stuff in here. That looks awesome. And now, because I'm seeing like the same sort of thing happen here in the background, what I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to make people believe that like the stuff that's here in the foreground is happening here in the background as well. But the tricky thing that we're doing is we are spending like a bit of time working on like the stall in the foreground, and the stalls in the background, they can literally be blockouts with tileable textures slapped on top of them. You don't have to do much. They don't have to look good. It's just because we're trying to trick them into the idea of thinking that like, hey, the stuff in the foreground looks really nice and detailed. We can just like duplicate or like make stuff up with like simple stuff in the background, right? As long as you're never going to do like an additional shot that showcases that area, that's something that you can totally get away with. But yeah. So let's do a little recap, because that was a lot, right? So what I try to do is I try to make the areas look more interesting by, first of all, adding your story to it, right? Like the idea of like a festival or something like that happening here, but taking it to like the next level by making it like the core identity of the scene. So now we have something that's going on in the scene rather than it just being a street, right? Second thing is I looked for bulky objects to make the area more interesting to look at, right? So in the foreground, I kind of used cars. I don't know, you can probably find like cars on like the marketplace. It might take a little bit of time to find like good ones, but that would be my go-to, because they're big, they're bulky, they're easy to work with, and they obscure like a lot of the area, right? Because this area behind it here is kind of simplistic and it doesn't have that much interest to it necessarily, right? So that's my solution. You can pick another solution. And then yeah, like more on like the festival tour is I try to be like very deliberate where I put stuff so that I can obscure as much as I can from like the background with like the elements that I put in the foreground, so that I have to do less of the background, right? Yeah, so I hope this helps. I know this was a lot. You only got 1 week. This is a lot of stuff for 1 week. I know that I went a bit crazy, but it's good lessons to keep in mind for the next project that you're going to be doing, right? So try to keep it in mind for the next time as well. And yeah, good luck for this week. Can do it. That's the good attitude. I like it. I like it. I mean, that's honestly the right attitude to have. Go for it, man. You got this. Okay. I was, this was based on the real life street. Yeah, but we have to make it interesting, right? For us as environment artists, we have to take things from real life and make them more interesting if they're not. Like, and this is just like, yeah, it's a street, but the street itself is not that interesting, right? And then once we start adding a story to it, now this is a street that kind of makes sense for like a game environment, right? Something is happening in that street. We went on like the festival tour like this time around. You could have made it all about like this restaurant that you have on the left. You could make it all about like, I don't know, you have the choice to make it about whatever you want, right? But there just needs to be something there of interest to look at. Okay. Let's have a look. Sorry. People asking a bunch of questions for the team challenges, which are going on. I'm gonna keep it at this. I'm gonna chill out for the evening, but it was lovely to have you all here. I'll be back next week, Wednesday. Same time, same place. I think next week, what do we have? No portfolio reviews yet. That's the week afterwards. So, gonna be a busy week that time. Yeah, I appreciate you all being here. I wish you all a nice evening. And yeah, like Tobias is saying, have a good rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.